Okay, welcome to our panel. My presentation is as announced by the chair. The outline goes like this. Introduction, methodology, conceptual clarifications, Nigerian links with other West African countries and transnational organized crimes, context of emergence and proliferation of organized crimes in Nigeria, forms and dimensions of organized crimes in Nigeria, institutional legal framework and security architecture on transnational organized crimes, and we attempt a conclusion. I'll read and at the same time try and see if I can work within the time limit. The increasing border movement and activities of individuals, groups, and communities in the West African sub-region is already reaching a junction that is threatening to undermine the continuous existence of, excuse me, I want to get it. Okay, that will be better. Okay, so the increasing border movements and activities of individuals, groups, and communities in the West African sub-region is already reaching a junction that is threatening to undermine the continuous existence of border or continuous existence of Nigeria as a sovereign polity. The movement and activities by migrants and border communities in search of better choices and conditions of living, which appears initially harmless and are conditioned by factors such as drought, famine, and non-conflicts, are now overshadowed by terrorism and crimes. And so the emphasis of the paper is on transnational crimes. The paper argues that the spillover of terror and conflicts from neighboring West African countries, including the Sahel region, is feeding into structural inadequacy in the design and operation of Nigerian Federation. This is further worsened by the various socio-economic and infrastructural challenges facing the country. The first, therefore, resonates in the increase in armed trafficking, human trafficking, and other organized crimes in the country. A crime, we argue, does become strategy of circumventing marginalization, negotiating inclusion, and meeting other needs by the people. We'll speak to that later. Argue that transnational organized crimes not only feeds into terrorism and other insurgencies affecting the country, but rather weakens Nigeria's state capacity through bribery and other means of inducement of state officials. The effect of all this includes further pauperization and other development of the country and its people. The paper concludes that while the country stands to benefit from improved African peace and security infrastructure, security architecture rather, and other stringent security measures to curb transnational organized crime, much importance, and that's the focus of this paper, however, should be devoted to the building of necessary capacity to mitigate structural and socio-economic challenges, thereby guaranteeing the urgently needed human security and development. This may involve, we argue, addressing the various fault lines within the country institutional framework and providing basic infrastructure in terms of increasing employment opportunities, standard of living of the people, among others. The paper is essentially descriptive and based largely on extensive review of relevant literature. Other collected sources of data include government publication, mass media, print, electronic media, and other internet materials. Briefly on conceptual clarification, I'll try to look at transnational organized crimes, then state security, say, equal to crisis of development, human development now. Transnational organized crimes, there are a lot of definitions and attempt to define what it is really, but just for a working definition here, are crimes that are not only international, but crimes that by their nature involve broader cousins as an essential part of the criminal activity. In other words, transnational organized crimes is seen as being defined as those crimes that involve people in more than one country, maintaining a system of operation and communication that is effective enough to perform criminal transactions, sometimes repeatedly. And so we look at types: drug trafficking, advanced free fraud, internet fraud, human trafficking, diamond smuggling, forgery, cigarette smuggling, almost endless. Then, because this paper is trying to tie the crisis of organized crimes with the issue of state security, especially human security now, development. And so human security is defined in terms of ability of state to protect the generality of its citizenry and provide a congenial environment for development of their well-being and sustenance. And this tied to development, there always says that human security undermines development when development is divine in terms of the overall improvement of people's life chances and choices, just in that simple way. Talking about quality of living, access to basic essentials and amenities such as food, water, shelter, basic infrastructure, among others. We attempt to review the linkage that Nigeria has with other countries and transnational organized crimes. To establish that there is a link between Nigeria and other countries in West African region and even the Sahel region, and how this accentuates not really the cause, because we are talking about internal factors that prepare these transnational organized crimes. So we briefly look at the links that date back to 1,000 years of trade and religion, African, transatlantic slave trade, and some other means of trading activities that have existed for thousands of years. Then the current links and religion, of course, Islam and all that. And so the current links, we look at religion and trade, just as it was in the past. But now there's extremist, you look at the extremist interpretation of Islam and the emergence of Islamist movements and their involvement in illegal trade and activities. And those trades include kidnapping, human trafficking, narco trafficking, and others. And Nigeria got emerged the more in these activities through Boko Haram sect, activity of Boko Haram sect, and Saro, the splitter group from Boko Haram, and even other some yet to be identified networks, especially in the northern part of the country. For instance, we on the specific, look at what has been reported. That is the connection between the Islamists in Mali, the activities aiding and providing logistics to several kidnappings that have taken place in Nigeria, organized by the Ansaru and Boko Haram elements. And so the basis of argument in the paper is that organized crime, transnational organized crime, is crimes that extend beyond the border of Nigeria, that has link with other parts of the West African country, even extend to other parts of Africa. But that the impetus, the initial impetus and the emergence is tied to the situations in the Nigeria state. And so we talk about the structural deficiency of the Nigerian Federation and consequences of mismanagement of the country's political economy. For those, most of us, that are scholars of the Nigerian state, we can trace some of these problems to the structural balance at the time of independence, leading to marginalization, frustration, and disenchantment that came as a result of such an imbalance. And then this, instead of being reduced or being worked out by those who took over the statecraft from the colonialists, instead we have a situation whereby the socio-economic policies that were put in place further alienated the masses, reduces their access to good life opportunities and overall development. And so this is specifically seen in lack of basic structures, road, water, electricity, and all that, especially employment and all that. And currently, I mean, data has it that 70% of the people live below poverty lines. And so all the above were accentuated by other issues like criminal justice system that encourages crimes and impunity, corruption of the various security agencies, porous borders, among other pathologies that the country is trying to grapple with. And so this then leads to the emphasis there, and that is, to some, crimes to some people become strategy of circumventing marginalization, negotiating inclusion, and meeting other needs. For some, crimes become means of advancing one's socio-economic status, while for others, organized crime represents means of accumulating wealth and the basis for renegotiating inclusion in the political and economic era. Briefly, I will talk around this, that we have these various crimes, some operating at the individual level, micro level, some organized level. For instance, you look at kidnapping, we have a small-scale kidnapping. Then we have organized kidnapping whereby big ransoms are demanded. Then pipeline vandalization, people breaking into oil pipeline. At the lower level, then there's this piracy bunkering that's organized so that people can have access to be able to make statements in the political and the economic arena. And so that takes us to the forms and dimensions of organized crimes in Nigeria. Armed struggling, trafficking through government spaces by rebel groups, transnational Islamist networks, destabilization of Libya contributing extensively to the armed struggling because of the stolen arms that are being exchanged around West African countries. Then all those arms are stolen from the national armory in Nigeria, especially by Boko Haram elements and some other criminal groups. Now, mode of conveyance of this includes through donkey, through camels, through ships, speedboats, canoes, and all that. Then kidnapping for ransom. This initially characterized by the Niger Delta insurgency. Then later we talk about Boko Haram and Saru and all of them. But now it has gone to a big business in almost all the cities, involving kidnapping of elites, political and economic elites, and even academia. Recently in my school, Osun State University, Nigeria, the chairman of the Esew, the wife of the chairman was kidnapped towards the end of the year. And I don't know, at the end of the day, the woman were able to, of course, nobody will tell you that he or she pays ransom to kidnappers in Nigeria. Human trafficking involves groups within Nigeria in collaboration with other groups outside. For instance, we are all living witness to the threat by Boko Haram that the girls kidnapped from Chibok will be sold into slavery, drug smuggling, illegal drug production. At least from reports of NDLA and all that, we're able to know that this is not just a Nigerian issue. Internet fraud, also as reported by EFCC and other security agencies. Oil smuggling, pipeline vandalization. This is encouraged because there is a thriving black market for oil. Illegal oil around Nigeria, around West African region. Then something interesting is also cow theft. It's becoming more organized these days, and it can be accounted as one of the reasons why there is an unending crisis in North Central Nigeria, talking about Plateau, Taraba, and all that.
Let me just cut in here for a minute. Let me find out how many other people we have. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 papers. How many presenters are here now and are prepared to present? 1, 2. Anyone else? 1, 2. We've got 2. 3, 1, 2. That's it. Okay. So in that case, we have what?
3 more.
The lady is here. I'm so sorry, madame. You weren't demonstrative enough. You are so discreet. Okay. So yes, 1, 2, 3, basically. Okay. So we have a little bit more time, and I don't have to be intrusive. Okay. So it's now quarter. You had 15 minutes. Can you manage to wind up in another 5?
5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So those engaged in organized crime penetrate the Nigerian state through various means, such as corrupting state institutions, through bribery of officials to protect illegal activities. Their illegal activities, of course. They do engage in violence activities such as attacks and assassinations of non-compromising state officials. There's also infiltration of political parties through sponsorship of candidates and direct party financing, among other methods, aimed at weakening state institutions and undermining security. Now, the first of all this on the state is alarming, as the capacity of the state to provide for the socio-economic and welfare needs of the citizens is further reduced, while insecurity thrives and people's life chances are further curtailed. Now, it's not as if the Nigerian government, the authority in Nigeria, have no they've not risen up to address some of these crimes, organized crimes in the country. And so we try to look at efforts that have been put in place in the past through specialized agencies, NDLA, NAPT, TFCC, NAPDAC, to address some of these crimes. Then we have the general security architecture, the security agencies, a lot of them. Then there have been specialized laws to also address these issues. Trafficking in persons laws, Enforcement and Administrative Act 2003, Amendment 2005, led to the National Economic and Financial Commission on Other Matters Establishment Act. Then the Terrorism Prevention Amendment Act 2013. All these are laws, legal means that are put in place to address all these crimes and activities in the country. Apart from that, because of the transnational nature of the issues that we are contending with, so we also have some regional responses, several ECOWAS protocols to address and intercept crimes. But I want to put spotlight on the recently put in place, the recent effort that was put in place by ECOWAS in partnership with Interpol and EU. And this is called West African Police Information System, and it's designed to build the capacity of member states through the setting up of data basis for information sharing and exchange on issues relating to criminality at national and regional levels, and the possibility of an inflow and outflow of the information at the global level through Interpol. Of course, we are very conversant with Interpol. The regional response. Recently, some of the papers that we've listened to talk about this the APSA, the African Peace and Security Architecture. And it emphasized relationship between the African Union and regional economic communities on regional mechanism for conflict prevention, management and resolution of issues, crimes, and other insurgencies like that. And I want also to look at the recent multinational joint task force that was put in place against Boko Haram, not just for the insurgency, even for to address some crimes that are related to the activities of Boko Haram and some other sects like that. That's so far talking about regional and some other responses. But I want to conclude on the notes that the paper started from, and that is that there are a lot of all these regional initiatives, security measures and all that, but they need to address the root causes of organized crimes. I mean, the root causes in Nigeria that allow such crimes to thrive and proliferate, and that is what is the focus of attention in the paper. And that's to conclude that while the country stands to benefit from improved African peace and security infrastructure, architecture, and other stringent security measures to curb transnational organized crime at the national and sub-regional level, much importance, however, should be devoted to the building of necessary capacity to mitigate structural and socio-economic challenges, thereby guaranteeing the urgently needed human security and development. This may involve addressing various fault lines within the country's institutional framework. I mean, divine in terms of the structure of the federation, the institutions that work, the agencies and all that, and providing, of course, the needs of the masses. And then we can scale down the extent of organized crimes in the country and then reduce their linkage with other countries, other organized criminal networks that's sprawling West African space.
So thank you. Is abuse of citizens' demand in African states a study of security challenges in Nigeria? Now, basically, the paper centers on the social contract between citizens and the state. The paper dwells so much on it and drew its own analysis from that point. It started by telling us how the social contract came into being as a result of men's experience in the state of nature and the need to avoid anarchy as aptly described by Thomas Hobbes, what we call the Hobbesian state of nature, where he said life was brutal, nasty, and short. So at a point, people believe the rancor and the challenges to life was no longer bearable. There should be a better way of going into a social contract with the state so that each can live within a set rules, and the government that so emerge will also share the responsibility of protecting lives and property. So he started from there. So now he went into assessing. Now in Nigeria and most of the developed world, are these social contracts kept on the part of government? Are citizens protected as desired? So he drew a lot of he brought a lot of incidents or seen to show that really he believes that there's much left to be desired. The state is not up and doing, and he believes that somebody is failing on his part of the social contract. It means the state, hence insecurity. Then the paper tried as much as possible to define some concept because it linked it up with insecurity. He dwelt so much by saying security is a feeling of being safe and protected for something that provides a source of protection for loss on attack on harm. Well, he lifted that one from Esew and went again to advance another issue, the issue of good governance or government, because it's all about whether government is up and doing or not. He gave another definition of good governance, in which we know good governance is so wide. It could be no government is totally good and bad. A government, hence, these issues of magnanimous dictator or magnanimous dictators, they are there. So government can be good in an area of observing human rights. Government can be bad in an area. The same government can be bad in an area of economic management. The same government can be also good in maintaining security. So there can't be a totally bad government without some elements of goodness in it. So Jaye also made such argument. And basically I said he dwelled so much on three scholars, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Rousseau. Because most of them really said much about this issue of state of nature, government, social contract between citizens and the state. He dwelled so much on them and made much commentary on that. Then he went to cite sources of insecurity. Apart from, government failure, what is leading to, or what is really bringing up this insecurity in Nigeria? He cited economy, cited corruption, cited issues of this issue of people were just brought together and without their consent, the whole concept of Nigeria itself, that people, it's a federation, but people never really, it was a creation of the colonial masters. The North and South, they just agreed that we want to come together as akin to American experience, whereby 12 original states came together based on need and really agreed to form a federation. But this one, the Nigerian experience, is a different one. Some people, because of wanting to really maximize profit in order to administrative convenience, they brought the North and Southern Protectorate together in 1914, and one of its kind. I have never seen that kind of federation, because when you are talking of, when you see the Russian Federation, Australian Federation, Yugoslavian Federation, every federation, there seems to be some level of consent, and there seems to be some level of consent. But ours wasn't. There was no consent of people willing to come and federate. Hence, now a very big federal system with lopsided structures, state not evenly crafted, the revenue sharing formula still in contention, and everything about the federation now is in question. And people, every day there's agitation for fiscal federalism, restructuring of the entire system. But the policies and the institutions in place now are a big block or a big hurdle to identifying that. The recent experience of people like the Constitutional Conference, the recommendation are there, they are so good. But now you are trying to create a sovereignty be within another one. There are sovereign people given mandate by Nigerians to make laws on their behalf. They should take on all those things head on. But for you to create another body that will look onto those things, then what are the lawmakers doing? That was the contradiction of the former the former National Conference established or put in place by President Goodluck Jonathan. Well, he gave some recommendation that government should improve on economic management, government should fight corruption, government should create employment, government should reduce poverty, government should ensure that there is peace and unity in the country. Well, you see, all these things are good. It is good to also say so, but in job creation, economic growth do not necessarily translate would not necessarily translate to peace and security. Well, what I think he said Nigeria needs most, this issue of people believing in Nigeria, people living where they feel they can pursue life happiness. It's what I think will go a long way in promoting peace and security. Whether government fails or not, we've seen instances whereby there are cases where people, citizens need to come together and form a common alliance against government or against a certain policy, but at the same time, they are being divided on that issue. We live in a country whereby he gave an example where there was a minister of aviation who bought 2 cars worth almost 2 or 3 million US dollars. And it took about 7 months or 8 months for that minister to be dropped. And when she was dropped, as suicidal or scandalous as that was, she went and she was organized a civic reception in her village, and as if it was a heroic, a general who won a war and went home. So at the same time, we also witnessed that in Nigeria when James Ibori was being pursued by a international graft organization. His people in Delta also came out to protest that after all, it is their own money. It is not Nigerians' money. It is their own money stolen by their own person. So, well, you see, these are instances where we believe Nigeria should come together and fight a monster that is a problem to all. But at the same time, they allow themselves to be divided by the same crooks that have refused them the goodies of life. So Jaye went and he was critical about that one, and he insisted that we must fight corruption. We must, but at the same time, it's another monster. It's very difficult. There's no country that is corruption free. But when corruption is endemic, when corruption is institutionalized, the way we have it in Africa and Nigeria, then there is a problem, because corruption is multi-dimensional. But ours has become a way of life and promoted by the system and the actors of the system. So we need to cleanse the system of corruption. The actors themselves need to be flushed out, and people need to really know that until that is tackled, the issue of growth, the issue of direct foreign investment, the issue of security will always be a mirage to Nigerians. And finally, he said democratization, that we must begin to look at those hunting for power on issue base. It's no longer the north or the south, the west or the east or the middle belt or the cold north or whatnot. No, what have you got to offer Nigerians? Are you up and do you really know the job? Or you want to go and learn the job well in the position? Where are the blueprints? You don't come and shout party slogans and beyond party sloganeering. When you say PDP, they say power. When you say APC, they say change. Beyond power and change, what do you really have? We have instances whereby politicians will campaign for an office without even knowing the functions of the office. We've had whereby lawmakers or senators will say, I will build a school. But it is not your duty to build a school. It's your duty to legislate. But even while on rostrum making such balderdash, you hear people clapping because people have been denied what they ought to know. And at the same time, we campaign without manifestos. At the end of every 4 years, most of the constituencies or communities, they don't have a single book to say, okay, Senator so came and campaigned on this basis, and now we have his own manifesto. Let's gauge him based on what he told you, the social contract we entered with him some 4 years ago. Virtually none of them does that. It's during this last election that we were able to see for the first time party bring out manifestos before election. Formally, it's just a wild roller coaster kind of a thing. So Jai said that we must be able to get that right. That everything starts and ends with leadership. The buck stops with leadership. Once we have an effective leadership, Nigeria has been blessed with everything we need to be a great nation. The population is there, the natural resources are there, the will is there, and everywhere you go in the world, you still find Nigerian intellectuals, Nigerian scientists, Nigerian managers, and all that is desired in that country is a credible, purpose-leading, focus, and a decisive leadership that will take the country, place it on the right path, and within 10 years, I think we should be ranking among the 10 or 20 top economies in the world. Thank you.
Okay. As you already know, my topic is geopolitical hotspots in Africa. Sometimes I use the PowerPoint. Sometimes I'm going to speak off the cuff so that we can get through it, and then I'll be ready to take questions and discuss it. So what is geopolitics? That's the first thing. Geopolitics is a word that means different things to different people. For example, it's sometimes seen as a practice of a state controlling and competing for territory. For example, the scramble of Africa was based on geopolitics. And also, it looks at having a swath of territory or having an economic power over other states. And we will see in this paper that some of the actions or what happened in Africa then and now is based on basic geopolitics. So what are the types of geopolitics that we are talking about? The first one is classical geopolitics. This was established during European exploration. The Africans did not come to Africa because they like Africa. They came to Africa because the Europeans did not come to Africa, I apologize for that, because they loved Africa. They came because since the Industrial Revolution started in Europe, they had exhausted almost all their resources. And therefore, they were looking for new sources of raw material and new markets. For instance, I'll read what an author said about that, because I didn't want to have so much on the PowerPoint. It says, it is by the exercise of power by a state beyond its borders, which is what major European powers did during the scramble and later colonization of Africa. It is instructive to note that after more than 5 centuries of contact with Africa, European powers laid claim to almost parts of Africa. The scramble for Africa following the Berlin Conference was a smokescreen for the scramble for Africa's natural resource as a market for European countries whose resources and market base was dwindling following the Industrial Revolution. In fact, as the Bleach said, the Bleach 2004, Berlin Conference was Africa's undoing. Its legacy is African geopolitical geography that is the permanent liability after 3 months of ignorance, greed acquisition at a time when European search for minerals and market has become insatiable. Hence, it is the very core of many social conflicts and civil wars in Africa today. So I am taking the problem right back to when it all started, because that is purely a European thing that was exported. So, and what brought them to Africa was classical geopolitics. Classical geopolitics labels part of the world as barbaric or savage, and therefore in need of colonial control to develop and civilize their population. That is why way back they say Africa is the white man's burden. The other way around, it should have been the Europeans that were the burden of Africa. That is based on classical geopolitics. Then the second one is critical geopolitics. It uses the tools of the postmodernism to reclaim the study of geopolitics. Postmodernism is motivated by the desire to challenge statements of authority, especially based upon science and government policy. Practitioners of critical geopolitics highlight the role of language in taking for granted assumptions about other places to generate unquestionable narratives about other parts of the world and people that populate them, to justify military actions and other foreign agendas. For instance, when they tell you that a part of the world is underdeveloped, who measured the level of development and at whose role? When they tell you they are uncivilized, when they tell you that they are savages, they are trying to impinge on you a framework of thinking that that is true of those places. And so most people go with it. Most people go with it. For instance, there are other narratives today that has created ideas that other places are not worth it. They are illiterate. They are uneducated. They are this. But don't forget that those people have a local culture through which they had learned something. They just didn't come up like that. And so the third, okay, let me give you another example of critical geopolitics. Mapping the world in terms of exploitable resources, the Cold War, and war on terror. In short, when they map the world in terms of exploitable resources, they are telling you that these places are source of raw materials. We can exploit them. And that was the basis of colonialism in Africa that has left an indelible mark in many African societies today, creating problems that do not really follow those who caused them. So in short, classical geopolitics is a way of thinking that claims an objective and global perspective, but in reality is the endeavor of elite white males in predominantly and not exclusively Western countries with an eye on promoting a particular political agenda. So they still manipulate and create problems today for other societies, especially not theirs. And then the third one I'm going to discuss today is what is called feminist geopolitics. It identifies the complexity of people's position and the connectivity between people and places, instead of claiming near demarcation and differences between political space. To feminist politicians or geopoliticians, others cannot understand the world in the top-down manner. Only they can do it. All these three approaches of geopolitics are alive and well today and intact with each other in Africa. And I'm going to give you examples where they play out. How do they relate to Africa? I've already mentioned the scramble for Africa. What of the Cold War? The Cold War was between the Iron Curtain ideology of the former communist countries and the free market of Western democracies. But it played out in Angola. They took two sides. And up to today, Angola is still suffering from it. Angola has the highest number of amputees in the whole world. The number of landmines that is laid in Angola today has not been cleared. And so it left a swath of territory that could have been croplands, uncultivated. So that what they do is show you picture of hungry Africans, but they sowed the seed of most of the hunger in Africa. Look at Mozambique. Mozambique also is divided into two, the Frelimo and the government. The West supported one side, the communists supported the other. They started fighting among each other. Nobody cultivates, no development, no roads. Even the roads and bridges were blown up because of fighting. In fact, by late last year, the Frelimo said, oh, the government is not treating us well. We are taking up arms, all because of European geopolitics sown in the countries created by Europe. Now, the desire for territories, the sort of territories claimed. Look at Little Britain that wants Cape to Cairo colony and went for it. They don't mind dividing societies in order to get what they want, all in the name of colonization. And they claim to bring civilization, bring development to those countries. So, and then let's look at modern desire for resource control. Today, we have fighting in almost 20 African countries. And I'm going to mention as many as possible because it will take, that's why I didn't put the table on the board. It will take so many. Look at Syria alone. What caused the war in Syria alone? The desire for territory, control of resources. The diamonds that they were fighting for was smuggled through Mali and sold in Antwerp. And the country got nothing. They got nothing. Somebody, the first speaker also mentioned the Niger Delta. What they do is break the pipes, suck the oil, sell it. What do they get in return? Arms. Today, Niger Delta and many parts of the country are awash with Uzi rifles and AK-47. And so when he was talking of security, how can security stop when guns are awash all over? Created by desire to control resources. And then look at Cameroon. Cameroon and Nigeria have lived together, been side by side, but at the time they went to fight. Although today they are joined hands with Niger and Chad to fight Boko Haram that created the territory, all because of geopolitics, the desire to control a territory. Others are Central African Republic. In fact, I cannot understand the problem with Central African Republic. I still don't. Central African Republic, the same country, what did they do? One side Muslim, one side Christian. The Christians don't want the Muslims don't want the Christians. They start killing each other. The government of Central Africa is incapable of controlling either side. So they keep killing, burning each other, destroying villages, destroying whatever infrastructure they have. And so, why? Because each side wants to control the other wants to control the other. Somalia had no government for 20 years. What Somalia brought about by their desire to do this thing is that there was no government, nothing happening for 20 years. What happened on Thursday, the El Shabaab, a breakaway of Muslim group in Somalia, went to Kenya, killed 120-something students. So you see that what was sown in Africa has not stopped. I don't know whether we are going to see the end yet, except something urgently is done. Kenya is having the influence effect. And let me talk about the Arab Spring, generously called the Arab Spring. What started? The Arab countries, when they got independent, were concentrating on government jobs. They did not want infidels, so they did not build industries. So as the government was the provider of jobs, at the time it got saturated that graduates were not getting a job. In fact, they had 24% of their graduates unemployed at the time. And at that period, they had the highest unemployment in the whole world. Even though African countries that looked poor had better employment than those in a country like Tunisia, because they were not inclusive and they were not worrying about other places until one young man, a graduate, decided to seek a living. He planted vegetables and was selling it by wheelbarrow, just like you might see on street sides in some parts of Nigeria. What happened? The city authorities felt that he should not do that. They seized his wheelbarrow. And then on a day, he went back to collect it. The lady in charge insulted him. Of course, the way they look at women in that area is, So he came out, poured petrol on himself, and burnt himself because he felt insulted by a woman. And that sparked up a wave of protests from Tunisia to Morocco, Algeria, Libya, up to Egypt. That is what they call the Arab Spring. But Arab Spring did one thing. It changed the whole gamut of government. Okay, it changed the gamut of government in most North Africa. And then, of course, that led to the protest in Libya. The West took a side with a part of the Libyan government. Gaddafi was killed. The armory was opened. Nobody controlled it. Because of porous border in Africa, arms flowed right down to West Africa. And today, we have a lot of armed protests because they had access to weapons created or that was taken away from the Libyan armory. So what are the effects of these geopolitics and spread of arms to Africa? Today, we have a lot of child soldiers. The future is destroyed because when these kids, absolute kids who cannot go to school, how are they going to be the future leaders of the country? They destroy generations of future leaders by doing that. In many countries, there have been hunger and diseases. Refugee camps are awash. Guns, Uzi and AK-47 everywhere. Landmines and amputees abound. So loss of uncropped land in Africa due to landmines. Approximately half of Africa is embroiled in war and social unrest. About 5.6 million square miles of Africa, about half of the continent were involved. About 276.5 million people, or 35% of the population, are affected. And this data excludes area where conflicts and wars have ended. So you see that the geopolitics in Africa is not just to its good, it's destroying it, except a halt is put in place to stop further destruction. Thank you very much. I'll take questions if you have any.
Insurgency in Nigeria as a product of failure of liberal democracy. Since 1960 that Nigeria got her independence, her socio-political life has been characterized by one insurgency or the other, ranging from ethnic militias, armed robberies, Niger Delta militants, to the recent Boko Haram insurgents in Nigeria. All these insurgencies lead to wanton destruction of lives and properties, and also threaten the survival of the Nigerian nation. Now, these insurgencies in Nigeria, going by the causes and all that, it is obvious that it is a product of failure of liberal democracy. Because democracy has to do with the protection of lives and properties. And all that the insurgencies have done in Nigeria has, life is not secured, properties are not secure. As a matter of fact, the condition of Nigeria can be likened to the Hobbesian state of nature, where life is short, brutal, nasty, and there is war of all against all. Now we'll be looking at doing a little of conceptual clarification, starting by insurgency. Insurgency, according to O'Neill, is a struggle between a non-ruling a non-ruling group and the ruling authorities, in which the non-ruling group consciously uses political resources and violence to destroy or reformulate or sustain the basis of one or more aspects of politics. By this definition, insurgency can be said to be a rebellion against an existing government by a group. It is always an organized movement aimed at the overthrow of a constituted government through the use of subversion and armed conflict, or an organized opposition intended to change or overthrow the authority. Now, insurgency has three phases of organizations, namely, one, consolidation and preservation, in which the insurgents build up political strength. Two, progressive expansion, as the insurgencies gain strength and consolidate control by getting more supporters. Three, final decisive phase, where the leadership commits regular forces culminating in the enemy's destruction. Now, by enemy here, I mean the government which the insurgent group is fighting against. Now, insurgency uses several strategies, which include the following: coup d'etat, revolution, guerrilla warfare, riots, terrorism, non-violent resistance. Now, of all these strategies, terrorism is the most commonly adopted strategy, and it involves the adoption of some methods such as bombing, kidnapping, and abduction. Then we look at the other concept, which is democracy. Democracy, etymologically, democracy is derived from two Greek words: demos, meaning the mob or the people, and kraton, meaning rule. By that, democracy means the rule by the people. But apart from this etymological meaning, the most commonly used meaning of democracy is the one by Abraham Lincoln, which described democracy as the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And by this Lincoln's definition, I understand democracy to mean a system of government in which the people are in charge of the making and administration of the policies of that particular government. This can be done through the representatives of the people. It doesn't really mean that everybody will come together to make a policy and see to the administration of such policies. So democracy entails a representative government. Now we look at the principles or features of liberal democracy. Some of those principles include: one, sovereignty of the people, where absolute power resides with the people. Two, rule of law, which means that everybody is subject to the law. No one is above the law, whether a leader or a subject. Three is separation of powers, where power is being separated amongst the three arms of government, namely the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and each does its duty without interference. Four, censorship right and impeachment. This censorship right and impeachment belongs to the citizens. They have the right to assess their leaders or their representatives, and also the right to recall an erring representative, as well as change a bad government. Now, other principles of democracy include political participation, equality, political tolerance, accountability, transparency, regular, free, and fair election, checks and balances, human rights, multi-party system, and neutrality of the state institution. By state institution here, I mean the police, the SSS, the soldiers, and groups like that. Now we look at the failure of liberal democracy. What do we mean when we talk about failure of liberal democracy? Having outlined the basic principles of liberal democracy as we did above, the absence of the above-mentioned principles presupposes failure of liberal democracy. In all, we shall try to examine this failure of liberal democracy by assessing all those qualities. How far has Nigerians gone with the rule of law, separation of power? How functional is it in the Nigerian government? Checks and balances. How are each arm of the government checkmating the activities of the other? And when you look at all these principles, you will find out that these principles of democracy, none is being observed as it should be in the Nigerian system of government. That implies that democracy has failed in Nigeria. We will look at a brief history.
We'll get to a chance to talk. We're going to have questions. Let this lady speak, please.
We'll look at brief history of insurgency in Nigeria. here I try to outline some cases of insurgency in Nigeria and tracing the causes and the group that are responsible for it. The number one insurgency in Nigeria is the declaration of Niger Delta Republic. Incidentally, this happens to be the first case of insurgency in Nigeria. This was led or championed by Major Isaac Jasper Adakaboro. We call him Adakaboro, who was he was a student then, but his main problem, he was aggrieved by the way the federal and the local government were extracting the mineral resources, the oil particularly, in the Niger Delta region, at the expense of the Niger Deltans by neglecting them and not giving them the necessary things the Niger Deltans deserve. And in response to this grievance he has against the federal government and the regional government, he formed the Niger Delta Volunteer Force, NDVF, and this group of people, they declared the Niger Delta Republic in February 23, 1966. So after 12 days of the declaration, the army overpowered them and arrested Boro and his group, and they were tried and convicted for felony. But they were released in 1967, July precisely. They were given amnesty and Adakaboro joined to fight the Biafran War. The Civil War. This Civil War was as a result of it was a declaration of the Republic of Biafra by Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, Emeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, on May 27, 1967. This war lasted from July 1967 to January 15, 1970. And it resulted from a coup that was carried out, which the Northerners now felt that because of the pattern of killing in that coup, where Tafawa Balewa and Ahmadu Bello and other top Northerners, they lost their life. And Northerners felt that it was a deliberate attempt by the Igbos to control the state. And that gave room to the counter coup, which was organized mainly by the Northern soldiers. So this counter coup took part in July 29, 1966. It was led by Northern officers. This counter coup was followed by wanton massacre of the Igbos in the north, which led to their, we will have to move forward. Then the next one is Movement for the Emancipation of Niger Delta, the OPC, Odua People's Congress, then the recent one, which is the Boko Haram. We'll look at causes of insurgency in Nigeria. The causes of insurgency in Nigeria include 1, inequality, 2, marginalization, 3, poverty, 4, unemployment, 5, ethno-religious rivals, and 6, state-sponsored vigilante groups. On the side of inequality, when a group of people or a community, when they feel they are deprived of certain amenities, they are not being treated equally with other groups, it results to frustration and anger, and this can trigger insurgency in fighting for their rights. Then marginalization. This marginalization issue was a major cause of the Biafran War because the Igbos felt they were marginalized. Even the Masop, which is an after effect of a follow-up to the Biafran War, the Igbos also still felt marginalized. That's why they declared the Biafran Republic. Also, poverty, on the other hand, is also a major cause of insurgency. If you look at the pattern, the method of operation and the way insurgency, taking Boko Haram as an example, you look at the Northerners, you find out that it is the poor classes that are being used to execute all the insurgent activities. And also, ordinarily, a poor group would not be happy with the government. Sometimes we seem to blame the government for our condition, and this could cause insurgency. Then also, ethno-religious rivals. Nigeria, there has always been this rivalry between the House of Fulani Muslims and the Igbo Christians. It has even penetrated their politics. You look at political politics, they are ethnic based. You look at everything. When no one considers objectivity in voting, you vote because this one is an Igbo, this one is a Muslim, this one is a Christian. And this begins to raise a question: how real is the one Nigerian slogan if ethnic sentiments has to take control of everything we do? Evidently, you find out that the Boko Haram killing, the Christians are their main target in their operations. Then state sponsors vigilante group. Looking at one wonders the essence of this vigilante group, where a state has to sponsor a group, they call them the vigilante group, you buy arms for them and all that. Invariably, you are preparing them to form an insurgent group. Looking at the MASOB as an example, it is made up of the area, what do they call them? This area-based market security vigilante. I've forgotten their name, but there's a particular name they are known for. Bakassi Boy, thank you very much. You look at the Onitsha main market vigilante group, because they already have the necessary arms, so it won't be difficult for them to come together and form insurgents. And one wonders why sponsoring these vigilante groups. It is not necessary because we have the state security force. Use that money you're using to sponsor them and improve the security system. Then insurgency as a product of liberal democracy. Having examined the history and causes of insurgency in Nigeria, it became convincing that the insurgency in Nigeria is due to the failure of liberal democracy. This, in turn, is due to the violation of the principles of democracy in Nigeria, which includes inequality, lack of political tolerance, lack of accountability on the side of the leaders, electoral malpractices, selfish attitude of the leaders. In conclusion, having identified the socio-economic factors like unemployment, poverty, unequal treatment of citizens by the government, marginalization, corruption, electoral malpractice as the causes of insurgency in Nigeria, and having established that all these socio-economic factors are after effects of the failure of liberal democracy in Nigeria, which implies that insurgency is a product of the failure of liberal democracy. I therefore recommend that democratic practices has to be put in place at all levels of government, both federal, states, and local levels, to control insurgency and resolve security challenges in Nigeria to enable us to have a stable country. Again, government has to address socioeconomic deprivation in all regions of the country, especially in the north, where it is most severe. Also, religion has to be separated from politics and governance. The crisis of poverty, unemployment, inequality, and corruption has to be addressed, and the armed forces has to be adequately funded to enable them protect the lives and properties of the Nigerians. Thank you all.
The difference